Welcome once again to Help I'm a Parent, Christian Parenting in the Real World. We're so happy that you have invited us to enter into your home, your church, or wherever you may be gathered today. Perhaps you're viewing this alone or as a couple, or with a small group of friends, or maybe with a large church group, or perhaps you're watching this online. Wherever you are today, we are delighted you've joined us on this program.
We're your hosts, Drs. Claudio and Pamela Consuegra, and together we serve as the Directors for Family Ministries for the North American Division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We believe that the most important role you will ever play is being a parent to your child. God has entrusted you with a treasure more precious than anything else you will ever own.
In our last segment, we looked at ways to help our children be respectful and responsible. Today we're going to discuss the 3 T's. These 3 T's are very much a part of our everyday lives: our time, our talents, and our treasure.
The first one is time. We all have the same number of hours in a day, and yet some of us tend to get so much more accomplished within that same 24-hour period. The skills acquired to use our time wisely and efficiently are actually learned in early childhood.
Talents. From birth to age 7, it's not too early for you as a parent to begin to see the special gifts and talents that God has given your children. You may notice that they love music, or perhaps they love building things as they play with their blocks. Girls tend to lean towards being nurturing with their baby dolls. Or perhaps your children are especially gifted in their speech or even in their ability to argue. What role do those talents play in the development of your child's self-worth?
And what about treasures? We all like to put a fence around what is ours. Our treasures, as small or as few as they may be, are important to us. We've earned them, and we want to safeguard them. Matthew 6, verse 21 says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." How do we help our children to be willing to use their treasures for Jesus?
We call stewardship all that God has entrusted to our care: our time, our talents, and our treasures. Home is the place where children learn the principles of stewardship, the proper use and care of all that they are and all that they have. Thank you for joining us as we discuss this important topic.
Today's guests will help us look at practical ways of teaching our children the principles of good stewardship. How can we as parents teach our children to use their time that they have wisely? How can we help them develop and use their God-given talents? And how can we guide them in using the material possessions that God has blessed them with to glorify His name? Our special guests today are Dr. John and Janice Matthews. Dr. Matthews currently serves as the Stewardship Director for the North American Division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He holds a Doctor of Ministries degree from Andrews University, as well as being a certified stewardship professional from Christian Leadership Alliance. His passion is teaching stewardship principles, especially as they relate to the spirituality of money management in the postmodern culture.
John is married to Janice, who is a cardiology nurse practitioner. Janice has recently authored a series of books for children on the topic of stewardship called the Stewardship Jack series. Jack is a golden doodle, and they are using their beloved pet to teach children important stewardship principles. They have one married daughter, Angela, and are proud grandparents of 2 grandchildren with a 3rd one on the way. Together they enjoy hiking, running, performing country gospel concerts, and sleeping late in the morning.
John and Janice, we want to thank you so much for being with us today. But before we begin our conversation, we want to visit with David and Jamie as they discuss the challenges of teaching their small children the stewardship principles of managing their time, their treasures, and their talents.
As I think about teaching our children how to be good stewards of themselves, their time, of their treasures, I am reminded that when I started out as a parent, I thought I knew what it took to teach a child. I was interested in having young ones to train. And then when they were here, I realized how much I didn't know. And so, just the little things like tithing, that ought to be simple. You could say 1/10 of the amount that you're given, we give to God, but we don't have an allowance. The details make these lessons to be difficult. And so I know that I ought to be teaching these things. Example would be a good way to do that, but we give our tithe online, and so it's not obvious to the kids that we're participating in that activity.
So in terms of time management, I see a lot of wasting time, and I'm not sure how to address that. How do you help your child make the most of every moment they have, whether it's in play, whether it's getting their chores done, or obeying the tasks that I've given them? How do you help them be efficient?
Making the bed can be a half hour of, but I need help. Or it can be an instant success, and I don't even know how that works. It's important to me that my kids respect the same things that I do, that they're interested in the same activities that I have. So music is really, really big for my family. And I want to make sure that our kids are interested in participating in music, that they can worship that way, and that they can be with other people in that way. But I'm very interested to see what happens when we make that more formal. I'm afraid we lose the interest. Now, there are so many pitfalls in this path because I've had such high expectations. I do think it's important when they're playing outside that they're self-sufficient, that they can be on the swing by themselves, or that they can pick themselves up on the bicycle if they fall down and get started again, because these are important lessons, and these things come more naturally to them and to us as parents.
So as I think about all of these issues, I want to know, how do I train my children to be good stewards of the resources God has given them, whether it is money, whether it's time? What is it that we can do, practical steps that we can take to train our children to be good stewards?
Well, those are good questions, especially when it comes to children, small children. How do you teach them stewardship principles?
So Janice, let's get our conversation started by asking you a question. Why is it so important that we're dealing with this topic of teaching little children birth to age 7, the principles of stewardship?
Well, I'm happy to answer that question because I'm really highly motivated. One of the reasons that I'm motivated is the impact that our consumerism culture has on the very tiny little ones. It is appalling when you read the statistics of the effects that it has on them mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And I feel like stewardship is the antidote to a lot of the problems mentally, emotionally, and a lot of the attitudes in our world today.
So you're really talking again an overall picture, not just one area. Sometimes we think of stewardship as money, but you're really talking of a lot of other things. In fact, John, I'm interested, how does the knowledge of stewardship affect the little child? How does it affect the church? How does it affect the community?
In a very positive way if it's taught in a proper fashion. I believe one of the foundation stones of stewardship is happiness. So if the child is happy, the family's going to be happy, the community's going to be happy, the church is going to be happy. So how do we teach happiness to these little tiny children? I think of the little melody, Rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. If parents can sing that melody to little tiny infants, they probably could come up with some, they don't have to be eloquent poems, but they could come up with some special song that they could sing to their infants. I mean, it starts as very innocent. The child may not be in a formal class, but they're just singing to them. The parents are singing to them. That's one way to get across principles. As a matter of fact, I wrote a song
So you're really giving us a practical idea of a baby in arms.
A baby in
And
arms.
this is something that mom or dad can do from the moment they're born.
A baby in arms, let's say this song is written, say, like for a 2-year-old.
Okay.
I read where Theodore Roosevelt said, a good citizen is a person that pulls their weight. A good steward pulls their weight. So here's a little melody,
All right.
or a little song.
All right.
I'm a steward, I take care of my cat. But it's more than kitties, anyone knows that. So I will be nice to kitty cats that climb a tree and set an example as Jesus wants me to be.
You know, that's so beautiful, because I don't think we often stop to think as parents that when I'm teaching my child to take care of their pet, I'm teaching them
Yeah,
stewardship
that's right.
principles.
Exactly.
You know, just through the little daily interactions they have, that it doesn't have to be formal, but taking care of a kitty cat, that's stewardship.
Yeah, they like their kitty cats.
They do.
I like what you said, though, about happiness. You know, so many people think that parting with things, parting with money, given time, it's not a good thing to do. But you're saying the opposite. When you do give, when you share, it actually makes you happy.
Yes, this is a big challenge to say to a child that may not grasp everything you're saying, but they grasp more than you realize, to say, you know, God is an owner and he's giving you this kitty cat to take care of, and start introducing that concept in a very simple way.
Sure, sure.
It plants the seed.
So how do you teach, again, in practical terms, a young child? Just give me 2 or 3 specifics to teach a child stewardship principles.
Well, it depends on the parent. They've got to understand it themselves. In an airplane, airport, going through security line, a little infant in the mother's arms had to give up his sippy cup to put in the bin to run through the electronic machine. And he was just squalling and squalling. What a teachable moment. Say, you know,
wow.
Jesus will take care of your sippy cup. It'll be okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
That's a wonderful practical idea. But there again, stewardship in a sippy cup at an airport,
Yeah.
and a lesson. So those teachable moments that are woven all throughout the day, things that we don't plan but just emerge.
You know, I want to learn more about Jack.
Tell us about Jack. Who's Jack?
Well, it is because of I was so interested in the stewardship and seeing the importance of starting very, very young. And we have a dog, and because of our interest, he became Stewardship Jack. And I started writing little rhymes, and he loved to pose for photos. And so I started rhymes, making scrapbooks online. And then as we got interested in stewardship, I thought, well, let's do something having to do with stewardship for little tiny kids. So I started a series of books. Right now I have 3 ready to show, and they're on several different topics that I think are very relevant to little children.
So the first one is
This
the
first
red
one is Stewardship Jack, and Jack Gives Back.
Okay.
And it's about tithing, giving back, not giving to, but returning. And it's a concept that, you know, everything isn't mine, mine, mine. It all belongs to God, and 1/10 of everything that's our material possessions, our treasure, we need to return it to God, and it's why.
So Jack is speaking, teaching. Is that
Jack
what
is supposed to be doing the talking. It's in his words. But of course, we know that dogs can't talk, and I make that clear at the beginning. And we talk about how do you give tithe? And of course, Jack gives biscuits instead of money. So he gives 1 out of every 10 biscuits, and learns that brings happiness when you learn to return to God and realize that He's your owner.
So let's give parents a very practical idea, because you brought up tithing and you brought up Jack's 1 out of 10 biscuits. How can we teach even young children the principle of tithing? We heard it in our family that we were introduced at the beginning of this segment. That's a question they have. When so many parents give online, How do we teach them that?
I think the important thing we've already touched on is by example. They may give it online, and at first the child does not understand what online is. They don't see the money coming
Right.
and going.
Yeah.
Right.
So you start with what they can see, with dog biscuits, then with their pennies. You can have a series of banks for children depending on their age level. One is for saving, one is for spending, one is to return to God, and you can get more elaborate if you want to have offerings or tithing.
So as soon as they can count to 10, whether it's counting dog biscuits or pennies, we're teaching them the principle
Well,
of
they
tithing.
love to learn, and they're learning counting as well as
Right.
learning that 1/10, and those are connected to practical everyday lessons.
Part of this poem we set to music. It's called 1 penny, 2 penny, 3 penny, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2 pennies more. 10 little pennies, but they're not all mine. I'll give God the first one, then I will have 9. Then there's some other parts to that
So
song.
they have the words of the song that the children
Right.
can learn from the moment
And
that
there's
they begin to hear
activities in
them.
the back of the book for how you can, maybe at a time where you have worship time with your children, or maybe bedtime with the children, little activities they can use to talk about tithing. One of them is the benefits of tithing, where you have a bowl and you pour a box of cereal into the bowl until it just overflows and overflows. And then you talk about how God will open the windows of heaven and pour out blessings on
That's
you.
a great idea.
That is a great
You know, we want to
idea.
talk more about Jack. I want to hear more about the other books that you have too, and more about what stewardship is all about. So we'll come back and talk more about that in just a few minutes. You can probably already tell that we will not be able to cover every area, every concern, or every question you may have with just one parenting resource. Parenting will continue to produce new challenges and questions every day. As our children grow and change, so do the parenting challenges.
Our goal is to continue this conversation with up-to-date resources and parenting tools. We will do this online via our website. There, you will find out about any updates to these materials. And in addition, you will receive downloadable resources on a regular basis. It's our desire that this resource will assist you in your God-given role as a parent, using principles that are firmly grounded in the Word of God. So now let's go back to our conversation with our guests on today's program as we continue on the journey of exploring our God-given role of parenting.
Thank you so much for continuing to be with us. You know, we talked about tithing already, the treasure part of our stewardship. But what about time? How do you teach young children that stewardship also includes time?
Let me begin by saying I wish I knew what Jochebed did in teaching Moses.
Okay?
We don't have a record of that,
No.
but she was diligent in spending quality time with that little one.
Because she
Before
only
he
had a
went-
limited amount
Only
of time.
a limited amount of time. In Proverbs, it says we shouldn't leave children alone. And in Deuteronomy, it says we need to be diligent in teaching them
That's
these
right.
principles.
That's right.
And Jen has a really good perspective on that time principle.
Is that one of the other
One
books?
of the books.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, this second book, Jack and the 10 Rules, it is a book, it's about the 10 Commandments, actually.
Oh.
And of course, one of those 10 Commandments, it talks about a 24-hour period of time that is actually especially blessed of God.
The Sabbath.
And so that's another one aspect of practical teaching of time and how its value is to us and to God.
So that God gives us the entire week, but He wants us to spend a special amount of that time for Him or with Him. That's the seventh of that. You know, is that confusing for children? 1/10, 1/7? Do you know in your experience?
You know, I think children are smarter than we give them credit for.
That's right.
That's true.
They can understand a lot of things, and I think that when we teach them, if we use simple language and things that they can see, I think they can grasp these concepts quite easily.
And actually, it's not only 1/7, but it's also the portion of a day that we have for worship in the morning, worship in the evening, the time that we spend praying and studying the Word of God. That's time.
If we don't take the time with them, the retailers will. And all kinds of other organizations, they are going to monopolize the time of those little ones.
Interesting when you think of the amount of time our kids spend at school, at church, sleeping, eating. You know, you begin to shrink the time to very little that we as parents have, but yet that should be the most important time that we spend with them.
One important thing to teach children is on accountability. And that accountability, of course, covers everything. And one way you can do that is with just the concept of delayed gratification.
And
about
that is so hard today, because when children, they want something and they want it now. Because it's the latest, greatest thing. Their friends have it, or as soon as they turn on the TV, they market so well to our young children. So how do we teach children this important principle of delayed gratification?
Delayed gratification is also closely tied with gratitude. You're content with what you have, you value what you have. So how do you teach them to value? I think you can teach them value by delayed gratification, and you teach them delayed gratification by planning and trying to figure out how you can achieve a certain goal that will achieve satisfaction.
Yeah, but see, they watch you go to the ATM and money comes out
That's
so
right,
fast and
that's
easy.
right.
That's why they say, Mom, Dad, buy me something. Well, we don't have money. Well, let's go to the ATM. So tell me, what's
Well,
that
this
bear
little
all about?
bear is, well, I better not say how old it is, because it's my daughter's bear. She was 4 years old. We lived in a darling little town, Muscatine, Iowa, when she was 4 years old, and we went to the mall, and she saw this very bear in the store, and it wasn't expensive. I could have bought it for her, and she would have liked it for a few minutes, and that would have been the end of it. But I thought, you know, this might be a good time for her to learn the value of saving and doing things on her own. So she saved her money, and it wasn't long because it wasn't very expensive. And I remember going up to that counter with her. She was tiny. She reached up and she put her money on the counter, and she was able to pay for her own bear with her own money that she had saved. And she and I both, I just called her a week or so ago and said, do you remember this still? And she says, yes, I do.
That's probably
I
why
bought
you
it with
still
my
have
own.
it. It means something more.
And it means something to both of us, because it was her
Absolutely.
first experience in achieving a goal and delaying her gratification.
Sure.
Right. Now, in the short time we have left, we also want to make sure that we cover the area of talents. You know, as parents, we want our children to grow up to be a musician or a great soccer player, and it seems our schedules today are so packed with extracurricular things. The piano lessons, the art school, the painting lessons, the gymnastic classes, the dance classes.
Karate.
How do we teach our children to use, first to identify and to use their God-given talents?
Well, that's important to me as well. And the third book that I had Stewardship Jack
Is that the
write
green one?
this one is called Jack's Hats. And you've heard the expression, or what hat are you wearing? And that is meaning, you know, what do you do, or what is your talent? And in this book, Jack is dealing with talents in a way of what is his talent, you know? In some of his little poems, he's saying, we all have talents and things we can do. Some have a lot, some have a few. And he goes through, well, I can't ride a horse.
You know,
I
by
couldn't
the
stay
way,
in a
before
saddle.
I forget, you can find those books on our website, helpimaparent.org. So anyone can find the books there, or a link to purchase the books, because they are fantastic books for children.
That's right. Just look in our section on time, talents, and treasures, and parents will find out how to purchase these Stewardship Jack
That's
books.
helpimaparent.org.
That's right.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that these Jack talks about talents, and that basically when you realize that the talents you're given to, that you have, are really a possession given by God, and you're to use it to help others. That's another way of teaching accountability.
Yeah.
We're to use those talents and to find out what our talent is, be happy for that talent, develop that talent, and use it to share with others.
So all children have a talent.
Every
they have
child.
a gift from the time they're born. You can almost see that natural ability to do certain things, be it exercise or singing, and it's just a matter of the parents finding out what that talent, or paying attention to see what talent they have, and then cultivating it. For what reason? What for?
They need to connect that gift with the ultimate steward, who's Jesus Christ, the giver of all these
The
gifts.
giver. He's the one that gave them the talents.
And that has to do with ownership, with stewardship, with salvation.
Sure.
And they've got all the things that child learns and the parent teaches that child has got to somehow be connected to the ultimate steward, as I call Jesus. And because he demonstrated delayed gratification. He demonstrated love for children. He demonstrated kindness. He demonstrated.
That was God's plan for stewardship then. It wasn't just some kind of idea that he came up to make our life difficult, but rather to connect us to him.
If we live according to his principles, we will be happy.
Wonderful. Great
And if we
idea.
can get those principles instilled into the minds of those children, even when they're infants, they will be happy, because retailers want that child to be a customer from cradle to grave.
Yes.
So once a parent, always a parent.
Yes.
We've got to teach those children, be diligent about conveying simple messages of how Jesus loves them.
So learning to be content
Wow.
with all that God has given you, your
Yes.
time, your talents, and your treasures.
Yes.
Well, John and Janice, we want to thank you so much for joining us as we have explored some of the challenges of parenting today. And we want to thank you for joining us as well, as we have explored some of the challenges of parenting today. We invite you to visit our parenting website, www.helpimaparent.org. There you will find many additional resources and materials. And when you feel like screaming out, "Help, I'm a parent," claim God's promise. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
Now join us next time on Help, I'm a Parent, Christian Parenting in the Real World, when we will talk about how to continue our parenting journey even when the challenges seem relentless and answers seem few. Until then, we invite you as a parent to cling to your Heavenly Father.